Welcome Motivation Sunday. Welcome Motivation Sunday.
Welcome to another edition to Motivational Sundays with Kevin and Friends. This show was created from more than 300 motivational quotes developed from my books and over 40 years of me studying human behavior. I had always wondered how the same quote landed differently with other people. Are they words that just lay there on the page, or were there a conversation waiting to happen? Well, I want to welcome everyone to Motivational Sundays with Kevin and Friends, Mindset Messenger. I'm your co-host. I am joined by a group of wonderful people. I got Larnaz Kinsey over there. I got entrepreneur and magazine owner, Miss Blue. I got another entrepreneur over there. He's bragging about how warm it is over there where he's at, and he's traveling. He's walking around in t-shirts, muscled up and whatever. And let me tell you, he's only 18. He got a fake mustache and beard, trying to be an adult. We let him sit at the table today, Mr. Brian Roberts. And the voice of our show, we got Dr. Breakthrough. And not to be overlooked, I'm going to tell you, didn't Johnny Gill talk about something with a red dress or whatever? We got red lips today. We got PJ, all right? And the person, I'm going to tell you, if anyone's looking for your National Geographic magazines, the ones that you had in your grandparents' house or whatever, I know where they're all at, right, Patrice? Miss Patrice Richard. And bringing a quote today, all right? We are honoring another historian, someone that has made a difference in someone's life. And that's what we're going to talk about, George Washington Carver. And it's going to be brought to you, his story and how it impacted the life of Mr. Naheem Garcia, our hometown hero over in Boston. I mean, this is, man, the only time you walk in the room, the gang stop doing their gang stuff and they just stop to listen because Naheem always got something to say. He's making so much difference in not only his community, he's making an impact on Hollywood, and he's making an impact when he shows up every single Sunday for both me and all of you. So before we go, we're going to allow the voice of our show, Mr. Dr. Breakthrough, my brother from another mother. Will you go ahead and deliver the quote today?
Yes, sir. Well, again, Breakthrough Rising to each and every one of you this new month of March. And my acronym for March, Manifesting Abundant Riches, Choosing Hope. So our quote for today is by none other than the great Dr. George Washington Carver. How far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, tolerant of the weak and strong, because someday in life you will have been all of these. George Washington Carver.
Go ahead, Naheem.
Well, thank you again, all of you. And Dr. Breakthrough invited me on the show where we brought our Black historians. So I wanted to give credit to that. And I brought this quote, and I was telling the story about there was a time in my life. I've just gone through a divorce. Life, my career had dried up. Everything had dried up. There was no acting, seemed like everything just all stopped at one time. And I finally got myself an apartment. I was staying in my car for a week. My older brother got hold of that, got me over to his house. What I thought would have been 2 weeks became 9 months. And so things started looking up. I had an apartment, but I was feeling very down. People were looking down at me, making me feel down. And I was just putting myself down. I was putting myself real down. And when you find yourself feeling like, God, what more is left? Is this it? And not that you're to question the supreme architect, but as a human being, we do have that question. Is this it? Is this all I'm amounting to? Is there anything more that I can do? Because I just felt like I was dying, spiritually, mentally, physically, just dying. And it was a very scary time. And I'm unpacking, I'm setting up this apartment, I'm realizing that I got 20, 30 years of my life bagged up in this apartment, and I started breaking things down. and I come across this frame that someone gave me. To this day, I still don't know who gave it to me. And I put it right in front of me in the coffee table. And I read, how far you go in life depends on you being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong, because one day you would have been all of these. When I read that, it blew my mind. It relieved me. It made me, I started sending it to everybody, because especially the people that I needed it to go to, because it was important for them to know that while you're judging me, remember that in life you would have played all of these roles. And if you can look down at another person without realizing or even thinking what it's like to be on their shoes. As an actor, I'm forced to always think about what this character's shoes is all about. How did they walk in them? How did they breathe in them? What was going on in their life? Every thought they get, the itch in their back that they can't get rid of, the wink or the way the neck twitch, all of those things is when you put yourself in a character's shoes. And I had a chance to walk in a lot of shoes, some very grateful and glorious and cloudy, and some very painful. So when this quote came to me from a man who took a peanut and made 1,000 different things with it, from a man that took, sweet potatoes and created more than, from a man that helped the world change, who talked with a very funny voice, who has been through slavery, born in the cotton field, working in the cotton field, born as adopted by a couple who loved him and cared for him. He was blessed to have that, but he was taken away. Do you imagine being kidnapped today? I mean, we may call it ICE or something else, but at the end of the day, it's just, imagine that happening to you. And with all that, he persevered. He became one of the greatest beings in the world, where we got presidents, 2 presidents, and a prince that made out of his way to meet this man, because they had to talk to this man. They had to hear his words. They had to understand this great mind. And he inspired life in me. And he reminded me that you will walk many different lives, and many things will knock you down. But in the great words of Mr. Donnie, we fall down, but we get up. Thank you.
That was well said. That was well said. I guess you guys, I did the kung fu thing. My lips were moving. You couldn't hear anything. But anyway, I was saying it was well said. It's amazing. It's like when you listen to the stories of people that came before us, they are setting up the next page that we're turning before us right now. Um, you know, I don't know if this makes any sense. And this is probably too much of a share, but this is family. Um, what does tender mean and what does it look like to young people today? And I want our young people to take a good look at my panel. I know 4 individuals on this platform right now that have been part of the story that Naheem just told. Homeless, broken. 4 individuals, all brothers from another mother, that have been that way. I know individuals that have been sitting on and holding the key to death's door because life had hit them at a certain point, and they were about to turn the key and take and walk out of this life into a life unknown to any of us. So when you young people, when you look at this quote and you talk about young and tender, the message that we're delivering to you is foreshadowing the next page of your life. So I want you to pay attention. Matter of fact, every young person, anyone below 18 years of age, anyone 21 years of age that knows someone 18, anyone 25 that knows someone 21, share this quote and ask them to write this down. Because you're not there yet. And when you get there, the reason why we have these conversations is we are preparing the next step in your life on how you should react. We don't want you to follow our footsteps. We want you to be ready when you get there to make your own footprint in the sand. That's the reason why we share this story. So I'm going to turn this over to one of the queens on our show, Miss Stephanie Blue, and ask, how does this quote land on you? Miss Blue.
I was listening to Naheem. Thank you so much. I mean, I was intentionally listening to you, and thank you so much. And Kevin, what you just said, I was trying to prevent myself from becoming emotional on the screen, right? And I said, he sure better not call me now because I'm a little bit too emotional, but I'm so glad that you actually did. You know, it's so funny with this quote, and it says, one of these days would have been all, that's me. I'm all of these things, right? When I heard the quote the first time, the first word that came into my head was engage, right? And the second word that came into my head was kindness, right? Because that's exactly what this quote represents. How we engage with people, whoever they are, from the young youth to the older senior, showing that compassion, showing that tenderness. It's everything. How it works for me is because it keeps my spirit alive, right? Um, Larnez understands I'm a spiritual person, right? But my spirit needs to be fed. And it gets fed through engagement with people. When I talk to the young, I get excited. Even the ones in the elevator when I'm going downstairs, when they come in, I find something to say to them, right? That's encouraging, that's uplifting, regardless of what they look like, what they're wearing, how they're dressed. It makes no difference because sometimes you have to move past the outward and what people look like on the outside and get to the inside, the core of who they are. It's the same thing like with our seasoned people. Yeah, I'm using air quotes, like our seasoned people, because we look at them and sometimes they get to a point where people think that they're invisible. We walk through the streets, we walk in the elevator, we walk in the grocery store, we see them, but we don't see them. I look, I see them. It's important that I look past the walkers, look past and when I say walkers, I mean the physical walkers. I look past the walkers. I look at oh, they're all bundled down right now with hats and gloves and I speak to them. It doesn't take a lot just to say, good afternoon, how you doing? Or can I get something for you? Or to let them in front of you in the line, but just engaging with them. Because I can't imagine being 75 years old and in the supermarket and I've left an apartment that I've been alone all week and haven't spoken to anybody. And then I come outside and somebody says hello to me. And you ever notice when you do that, they start talking. They start talking about all kind of things, old music, old records, places where they used to live, things they used to do. And you know what? I listen. I listen to them because that's important. That's a part of the kindness. That's a part of the compassion that the quote is talking about. The sympathy that we're talking about, right? Not pity, but sympathy. You know, I I'm trying not to to mention the name of the gentleman who hosts this show, right? Because but I can't help it. I can't help it because he is this quote in action. If you've ever been going through something or ever been in a dark place and you needed help to get out, and Kevin, I will mention it again because it's so important to me. I don't think that I would be sitting here today, March 1st, 2026, had I not spoken with you on the phone that day. And that means everything. So we have to show up for each other. We have to show up. We have to see each other. Because if we don't see each other, then people are just walking by. And you know what? Take these things out your hands. Take these out of your hands, put them down. I'm trying to put down cell phones today to see what life is like outside of my cell phone. So thank you for the quote, because you guys know I can go on, and unless Larnez gives me the time sign, then I will keep talking. But thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing what everyone else on this platform has to say today.
Hey, Mrs. Blue, thank you for calling me out. wasn't expecting that. But this quote had me write down a bunch of questions. I want to ask you, since you brought it up, what does sympathy towards surviving truly require from all of us?
Not feeling sorry for someone, right? You mentioned that all of us, or there were some of us who have been homeless, right? I am one of those people that had to live out of my car, right, for a period of time, with a job, with family, with friends. But sometimes life takes us places where, you know, that's just where we end up, right? We bounce back, right? But I never wanted pity. I did not mind people being sympathetic towards me. I just didn't want the pity. I wanted you to understand what it was that I was going through. Help if you can. Resources, I'm not talking about finances, lead me places, help me lift myself up. And you can show me sympathy, and I'm okay with that. Anything versus pity. Don't look at me and say, oh my God, look, I can't believe you're living out your car.
Thank you.
The
Thank you.
sympathy says you're living out your car. What can I do?
Thank you. And the reason why I brought this up in the way that I introduced it is because if you look through, no matter what hue of someone's skin, some of the books that we read, some of the most successful people that we hold or we aspire to be, or we follow the blueprint of their life, have all been in the same situation. You know, the only difference is that when you're sitting there and you think you're living on the streets, you still see the penthouse. You know that corner, that dark room that you're sitting in. Okay, it's that view overlooking the city, the landscape, and whatever. You still have that vision. You don't accept being homeless as the end of the line.
You know?
It's just another part of your story to be told. And that's the reason why I asked you about surviving that and the tenderness. And we've all been through this. And don't worry about shedding a tear. PJ makes us cry every single week. Don't worry about that. But I will tell you personally, all right, I have shed a tear for happiness with each and every last person on this show. I have connected to a young brother that I grew up in the neighborhood with that's trying to pretend to be an adult on this show today. And I've shared a tear with him. I've shared tears of joy with Dr. Breakthrough, Stan, and celebration with Alarnez, PJ, and soon to be Patrice. We have all shared these personal stories. And the most amazing thing, I just came back from On Air Podfest that used to be called 2 years ago, the Black Podfest Festival. The only thing is, that only 7 Black podcasters showed up, and they changed the name of the show to On Air Fest. But when you talk about, when I listen to the owners of Audible, a brand company called Creators, when they're looking for sponsoring shows or whatever, they showed some 21-year-old kid, tall, skinny, and whatever, that had read a book on air, and he had 1 million followers and subscribers that respond to it, and he got to deal with Audible. You know, is his voice any greater than Otis's? Is his voice even greater than Naheem, Dan, Dr. Breakthrough, Larnez, Patricia, Stephanie, or PJ? The only difference between the opportunities that was presented to this young man and the 7-figure deal he got is someone giving them an opportunity. All right. So this quote, when you talk about George Washington Carver and in many things he did, he provided an opportunity to make our lives easier. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over, since I'm teasing Ryan about, you know, being the young one on the stage trying to pretend to be grown up. Welcome to the Big Kids Table, Brian. I'm going to ask Stan to give the quote one more time, give you a chance to kind of chew on the quote a little bit. Stan, if you don't mind.
How far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the weak, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong. Because someday in life, you will have been all of these. Dr. George Washington Carver.
All right, Brian.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm humbled today because last night I went to bed. I slept a couple of times, but I went to bed on my wife's movie, Remember Me, the Mahalia Jackson story, right before the NAACP Image Awards, which was a great honor. Because knowing where we came from, we were those people who slept on that air mattress together. Green Coleman air mattress. I will never forget her. We are endeared one and another. Come on now, right? Only so high.
Right.
Yes, say it
Hey,
again.
hey, Coleman fits in the back in a Ford Explorer. I know what that a twin size Coleman. If you got a
Yeah.
Ford Explorer, you ain't homeless.
Yeah, but you ain't helpless, see? And that's
No.
the piece. And and that's the part. And you said something earlier, Kevin, that is so true. I realized I can still look at the skyscrapers. I can still go and take a peek at the mountains. If I walk or I get there somehow, I can go and look at the ocean. And none of these things were taken from me. But as far as being the young, I am the youngest of a very senior, tenured family. My oldest cousin's 83 years old. And these guys were superheroes in my sight, did a lot of great things. But I would be remiss not to talk about not just my story, but Dr. Lael Alexander, who I had a chance to the honor of spending time with out in Tulsa. This man went through similar things, and that was what really got me because he was able. If you don't know who he is, I think it's Neutavan is the name of the company, and he had to go in 2008 to China because he's a genius to get them to accept and or someone who would invest in his ideas. So he didn't just seek the ideas here in America; he sought it wherever they would say yes. And that's something that I would say to everyone. There is a yes waiting on you somewhere in the world. Somewhere in the world, someone is waiting to tell you, yes, you've been fighting with your dream forever, forever. And when I went out to visit with him, I'm sitting down in his compound, and the only thing I could think of was the Jacksons when I was out there, because that's what it reminded me of. And he had a 20-acre horse farm. But then at 53 years old, he begins telling me a story. Yes, I'm actually older than him, Kevin. Look at that. And he begins telling me a story. And he says, I went through some of the same things you went through. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I was in the military and my ex didn't see my vision. She didn't see me. And he goes, and, there was some indiscretions or whatever there may be. And so he felt failed. It was then that he went back to college. So there's so many stages to life, right? But to advance to the stage of selling your IP, your intellectual property for $500 billion, even after all of that. And I'm sitting in his office and he's got over 100 more patents still left. And somebody is saying, I ain't got nothing left in the tank. No, that's a lie. Let me explain something. When I went homeless, that's when my creativity woke back up. Because if I looked around me and just saw what was around me, I would be depressed all day long. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was depressed for several days. But after I broke free of that depression, I've been weak, I've been strong, I've been young, I've had to be tender. I'm doing a thank you tour for all my elders, the Burrells, and finding out all kinds of stuff, just literally hearing things that you don't see on TV. That's what it's all about. I learned to listen to every single person on the street because I was you. You matter. Even now, even losing your house, even with 5 bank repossessions, whatever it may be, you still matter. And there's something still left in the tank. Maybe you're not in the right place with the right people to expose your genius, because there is genius in every single one of us. Allow that little child inside of you to wake back up again. Because think about it, when we were kids, we could be anything. We're going to fly airplanes. We're going to be president tomorrow. In the same day, we're going to be an engineer. We're going to be a scientist. And Dr. Lael asked me a question. He said, Brian, he said, in life, what is it that you want? He said, what do you want when you grow up? I said, brother, I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. And he just started laughing because that's what we need to keep in our lives. Remain as a child. That's where your creativity is. I yield the mic. God bless.
God bless to you. We wake up every single day with more questions than answers. So when I to throw this over to Patrice, I'm going to ask her to give her a share, but I've got a question before she answers. Spinning off of what you just shared with us, Patrice, we always talk about um, the power of owning your story. What is the power of owning your story and respecting other people's story as you travel?
So, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me. Thank you. I'm truly honored to just be in this present moment. I'm embracing it, and I am going to continue to live it out. So, my story, we are the stories we tell. You'll never know someone's story until you ask that person that specific question, because I can only tell it the best. I have the best version of it, right? Other people can try and tell my story, but they'll never amount up to the true story of what Patrice has been through and her experience, her life experiences. And I can break it down detail by detail in such a sui generis way that no one can never replicate it. And so my story is my story, and I own my story. And I get to a point in life where I get to choose to share my story if I so if I want to choose to share it. But through my story, by me telling my story to the world, I'm saving someone's life. I'm teaching someone. I'm giving someone some of my wisdom. And so I think it's always good to be that person that say, you know what, I'm willing to push you further into your destiny. I'm willing to share a piece of my knowledge with you. I'm willing to lock arms and really have conversations or have dialogue with you. And so yeah, that's what that means to me. And again, thank you for having me. I love this quote today, and it just reminds me when I heard it, I heard humanitarian. I heard being our humanity. When you think about her being a humanitarian, I am a humanitarian. You all are humanitarians, and we all are philanthropists too. There's different levels of those two identities, and so being a humanitarian, getting back to my childhood innocence, I hear all the things. Being that one that has the big heart or bigger heart for others, especially in the healthcare field. I'm in healthcare field, and I see quite a bit. And when you think about end of life care, being able to be that soundboard, being able to have an ear to hear, and not just always speak but be silent, because there's a lot of things that are being said to you, and knowledge is power. And when I think about when I take the moments to just listen, that's when I gain more insight on how I should represent myself in the earth. When I think about my youthful years, the experiences that I've had, it just reminds me that, what, it's okay to go ahead and sit still and think about all the goodness that I've experienced amongst my siblings and my parents and my family members and all my friends when I was younger. And so I try my best to get back to my childhood innocence, because swinging in swings, rollerblading, jumping rope, looking at Know Your Heritage, showing my kids, setting the tone, setting the foundation, teaching them, hey, this is what mama used to have. I'm going to expose it to you. Do whatever you want with it and add on to it. And so Know Your Heritage. I love the fact that I get to show them these National Geographic, right? My dad would sit us in front of the television and we would have to watch National Geographic. There was no ins, ends, or buts about it. And when the commercial would come on, we would have to get up and clean up and then come back and get up and clean up. And so that's why you see those National Geographic, because, I'm a fan and I'm a map collector. Not only that, but thinking about being compassionate for our elders. Man, they've been through so much. why there is no other option but to be compassionate for them. I feel like you gain so much when you just sit and listen to the wisdom and not only gain or glean after them, but apply the wisdom and teach others, right? So it's like a ripple effect because they've learned wisdom from their elders, when they were younger. So why not? And when you're being sympathetic with the striving, I mean, we're thriving. You have the mindset is important. You got to understand that you may strive to do your very best, but you're not surviving, you're thriving. And so I just have to keep a positive mindset, not only for myself, but teaching others that it's okay. It's okay to think differently. And then also being tolerant with the weak and strong. When you talk about people who may not look the same, people who may have different conditions, may have disabilities, may be out on the street. I don't call them homeless people, I call them progressors. And so being able to have a heart within, being able to be transparent is crucial. And so, yeah, I really like this quote. I'm actually going to elaborate even more for myself on paper after this meeting because it really builds a person up and it teaches you different lessons that you may not have ever thought that you may be learning today. And I'm learning. And so life is good. And I just think that this is a really good conversation. And I think we should have this again, this specific quote, because it's a lot to think about. So thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to thank Naheem for bringing this
And
quote
thank you, Naheem. Yeah.
and allowing us to showcase the story that lives on through George Washington Carver. I mean, the clear message here is that we all need to practice tolerance for both the weak and the strong. We also have to, also understand what true leadership is. Leadership is measured by empathy, not by dominance. And I'm gonna say that what's going on in the world doesn't represent all of us right now. Um, when I woke up and someone told me we were at war with a country that did nothing to us, um, you know, John Lewis, which was my person, civil rights leader, freedom writer, Congressman John Lewis, and also a fraternity brother. He said, get in some good trouble. Stan has said this before. Brian has said this. Naheem Marnez, Dr. Blue, PJ, and also you, Patricia. Peace is power. All right. Love will always dominate hate. But for some reason, we give dominance center stage when all it does is show our weakness. It represents a part of a character flaw within the individual that wields the staff. And if this is personal to anyone that's listening to this, I'm talking to you, and I really don't care how you take it. So, with that said, I'm going to ask Stan to give a quote one more time before I see what PJ and George Washington Carver, how this connects with you. Stan?
How far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong, because someday in your life, you will have been all of these. Dr. George Washington Carver.
PJ, how's this quote land on you? Probably have to unmute. It would help. And she's got a tissue ready already. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Unmute. PJ, let's unmute. Here we go. Here we go. We got it now.
The man who preached to the chickens, John Lewis. This was a bit of a tearjerker for me, not because it's not optimistic and positive, but it really hit some nerves, let me tell you. Anyway, the first thing that came to mind with this quote was, it was a poem 19th century, I believe, called Judge Softly. And this woman the woman poet was saying that before we judge anyone, we need to walk a mile in his moccasins. That was the first thing that came to mind when I heard this quote. Many of us don't need to imagine this. We have already worn multiple pairs. And I have been all these seasons. Now I'm in the aging season. My body isn't as strong as it once was, but my wisdom is deeper than it has ever been. Each season had its joy, but each season was hard in its own way. There's a line from a movie that says, when given the choice between being right and being kind, choose kind. Oh, the older I get, the more I understand this. I'm a lazy person, believe it or else. I'm very lazy, determined, but lazy. And it is so much easier to be kind than to judge and fight to prove that you're right. And many times I have needed kindness myself. I've been wrong before. I've been weak. I've needed grace and mercy before. So I guess the bottom line for me would be that being right feeds the ego, being kind feeds the soul. And I'm going to leave you with something from the book of Corinthians. This quote inspired me to think of this. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity. The end.
Thank you, PJ. And the greatest measure of success is character and owning your own story. Thank you, PJ. Larnez, all right. We're getting to that time of the show. We're about to wrap up. Stan is preparing to lead us out with his interpretation, but we cannot close the door to this show. And we're having a wonderful show today. When you talk about all the different podcasts that are out there, there's almost 6 million of them. You look at where content is truly presented, and it's on front stage. It's center stage today. This is where content basically found a home today. So Inez, if you don't mind sharing your version of your interpretation, how this quote landed on you.
Radiant Rising and Naeem, thank you for this very deep quote. When I sat with the quote, to me, this message is not about achievement in the worldly sense. It's about evolution of the heart. When it says how far you go in life, it is not speaking about distance traveled in status, wealth, or recognition. It's speaking about spiritual expansion, how wide your compassion stretches, how deeply your awareness is rooted. To be tender with the young is to remember that innocence is sacred. The young are fresh from mystery. They are learning how to be human. Your gentleness protects their becoming. To be compassionate with the aged is to honor the long road of living. Every wrinkle is a scripture. Every slow step carries stories. Compassion here is reverence of time itself. To be sympathetic with the striving means you see effort, not just outcomes. You understand the ache of growth, the vulnerability of reaching. You do not mock the caterpillar for not yet being wings. And tolerant of the weak and the young, This is deep wisdom because strength and weakness are not fixed identities. They are seasons. Today, you may be radiant and capable. Tomorrow, you may need to be held. True consciousness allows space for both in others and in yourself. And the final truth, someday in life, you will have been all of these. You have already worn these forms. The child, the elder, the seeker, the powerful, the fragile, the resilient. We are not separate from these states. We are moving through them continuously in life. So this quote reminds me your compassion depends on your empathy. The more you recognize yourself in everyone, the further your soul travels. The path forward is not climbed, it's softened into, and the measure of your life is how gently you walk among others' hearts. And that's how this hit me.
And thank you. And you just showed as an example how far kindness has to travel in order to get to its destiny. And it starts with you. So we've gotten to that point in the show. We're going to deliver the quote one more time. I'm going to do something a little different after Stan delivers his quote and I do my last share. I'm going to point out and thank Naheem for bringing in. I'm going to ask him one more question that will tie into that. So Naheem, you got another talking point. So Dr. Stan, with the quote, and then give us your share on how this quote lands on you.
How far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong. Because someday in life, you will have been all of these. So I have experienced both sides of this. Unfortunately, I grew up with a unbalanced type of leadership, and because I didn't have a father figure in the home, this person to me was who I looked up to, and so I found myself, like for instance, my oldest son. I remember saying to him, "Boy, stop acting like a baby," and my wife would have to remind me, "He is a baby." I was like, "Oh, yeah." So I was that guy in the beginning. I didn't understand that, right? And it was like, "Hey, just stop making excuses." And I had people that would, one of my good friends, well, Myron Golden, we were talking one time. His wife said, "Oh, you've changed so much." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, Tony?" And she's like, she was telling my wife, Nadia, "I used to be scared of him." I'm like, why? What do you mean? He's like, "You were just always so blunt and so just, you know." And anyway, I'll never forget talking to a senior citizen at one point. And when I got off the phone, my wife said, "Baby, don't talk like that to senior citizens. These are seniors." I was like, "Oh my goodness." So I'm saying a true confession. I went from one side of doing everything opposite of what the quote is to getting my breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough to changing to now I can say to each one of those that, I've made a huge breakthrough and difference in now living based on this quote. And to me, it also comes from the scripture. When they came to the master and they said, "When did we see you weak? Or when did we see you in prison? When did we?" And he said this, "And as much as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me." And so it really dawned on me then the way that I'm treating people is like if you treat every person, a lot of people say, "What would Jesus do?" Well, that's one thing, but what if everybody was a picture or a symbol of Jesus? How would you treat them then? And that's what he taught us in Matthew 25. Because they said, "Well, wait a minute, when did we see you needing help and we helped you?" Again, as much as you've done it to the least of these. And so we have to understand that how are we treating Jesus is really what the question is. So all this going on with the molestation of children and all this stuff, I mean, we have to understand this is terrible stuff. And there has to be repentance and there has to be a change. Job was the greatest man in the East financially at one point and the greatest man in the world. And then he lost it all. And what was so amazing was in Job chapter number 4, the scripture records that one of his friends said this, "Thy words," Job 4:4, "thy words have upholden him that was fallen, and thou hast strengthened the feeble knees." But here's a catch, he says, verse 5, "But now it has come upon thee, and thou faintest. It toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. And when I was reading this many years ago, the thing that hit me again after my wife mentioned something to me, but the thing that hit me, apologize, the thing that hit me was this: when it becomes a different story. I mean, that's what this man was saying to Job. He's like, look, dude, when you was on top, it was easy to encourage everybody else, but look at you now. I mean, Job, that whole chapter 3, he said, cursed be the day I was born. Matter of fact, cursed the nurse that even delivered me. I mean, he was going through, right? And his friend said, dude, remember how strong, when you were strong, everything is going good. You was so encouraged. But now look at you now. And so the thought that hit me was when it becomes a different story. And when it becomes a different story is when you experience it, or when one of your children go through it, or when somebody that you love goes through it, or when it affects your household. And so we would learn that and live that. This quote, I think, comes to life and changes us. It's not just something nice that we can say and think about. One more scripture that really helped me out again. Jesus said, he said, excuse me, not Jesus, but in the word, it says, speaking the truth in love. So the key is both of those. And PJ, like what you said was very powerful. If I could add a little something to this, because I really struggle with that, because I felt so, like, sometimes it'd be so mean, it's like, man, and then I'm like, well, let me try to be more loving, and it's like I was loving the devil. But no, it's speak the truth in love. So here's what I found out: if you speak the truth without the love, that's cruelty. If you speak love without the truth, that leads to compromise. But when you speak the truth with love, that's Christ-likeness. And that's what we're called to be, and that's our purpose in life. Everyone's purpose is to be like him. And so, again, when it becomes a different story, so all these people that are in power, all these people that maybe didn't know what it was like to be weak or don't remember, the story will change one day. But it'd be wise if we would wake up now and make the difference. God bless you. It's breakthrough time.
God bless you. And it is breakthrough time, and it is that time. I mean, I don't know how anyone can say this better, but life itself is cyclical by nature. And each and every last one of us at some point has played each of these roles, sometimes once, sometimes twice, sometimes repeatedly, and we're still trying to get it right. And the reason why I'm setting this up this way, because like I said, we're going through some stuff. I don't know why: greed, selfishness, power, ego, dominance. I don't know what it is. But Naheem, looking at this quote, and you brought this quote in, and it ignited a fire in each and every last one of our shares today. How do we show compassion to the ages in this fast-paced society? Tying this in with George Washington Carver's quote.
By not forgetting and not forgetting them. There's a real gap between the children and the grandparents. Very seldom do you find that relationship in today's time tight. The only reason you might see it is because a lot of times the grandmother is young and is the babysitter, right? But it's a different relationship because it's not the same one that most of us grew up with. You had your grandparents to get like when you got in trouble, it was grandpa, grandma, auntie, you went down the lane because that was the village. And you can't forget your old, and you can't think that aging is a sin. And aging is nasty. Aging is wise. My best friend is 90 years old. 90 years old, still driving his BMW and being fly. The problem that we have today is that we are taught that aging is wrong, and we're always constantly looking a way to be young. And we're not compassionate with the age. We're mean to them. An old lady was trying to walk through the snow coming down the stairs with 2 bags. Now, we know in Brockton, where I live, it's like living in Long Island. There's a commuter rail, and there might be a bus, and they don't come all the time. And they don't always clean up everything. And most of the people that live in my town do essential jobs. They're foreigners that got to work in hospitals. So when the storm was coming, them peoples was walking to get to a train that delayed or canceled, and they had to figure out another way to get to work so they could serve the people. And in serving the people, they're not being served nor taken care of. And this poor woman was trying to walk through, and everybody walking by, all these cars walking by, cars parked, and watching this woman go through. I ran across the street when I was coming. I said, come on, man. And not because I wanted to be a hero, it's just be compassionate. That could be my grandmother. That could be my mother. We walk by each other, we won't even speak. You say good morning or hello to a person, somebody think that you trying to be slick or wise. When do we become these people? Dr. Breakthrough? What'd you say, Dr. Blue? Dr. Blue said, well, what did you say earlier in the quote? You wrote it down in the chat.
I said, but what part do we play in the gap? Because what part do we play? We see this. Sometimes fear prevents us from speaking to these youth because we don't know what the reaction is going to be. But I tell you this, and Dr. Stan probably knows this. When we speak, we're using kindness, and they will see the God in us if we have God in us.
And there's a frequency. I deal with these teenagers every day. And there's a frequency that you have to speak to them to. It's just like being a charmer, and it's that with anybody. There's been many times that the Supreme Architect spoke to me in silence hell, froze the air, saved my life. I've got myself out of some situations because I live around goons. Okay, I grew up here in Roxbury, and it was nothing nice. No different in Detroit, Harlem, Chicago, wherever you live, where black folks are having a hard time. And not just black folks, anybody having a hard time. Because South Boston is some of the toughest people ever. Them white boys and girls down there in South Boston was nothing nice. And they were tough. They were real tough. And they were real angry, and they were real poor. So at the end of the day, it's about your heart. But the one thing I noticed about all that toughness and hardness, it was about loving each other and loving their family. If it wasn't for love, we wouldn't get up. So, because I could go on because, again, this has layers. It has layers and layers. And sometimes people forget. That, you've been in those shoes too. You've been there too. And that last but not least, when Dr. Stan said, Ms. Blue said about when does it become a different story? Is that what you said, Dr. Breakthrough?
Okay, don't start.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to end the show. I'm trying to end the show.
Sorry,
all right, but anyway, I wanted to ask because it's just something about this conversation and the shares of everyone that just kind of changed the trajectory of the show. And I thought, I said, something, we've already ran over the time that we've set up for it. And like I said, if you are that type of person that content is king, then listen to the whole entire show, even if you have to listen to it in two parts. So let me go ahead and wrap up because we're 15 minutes beyond how the show is set up. And I want to share with everyone. Thank you for with everyone's so powerful share and personal shares. Life is circular. We've all been young. We will all age. That's guaranteed. If we live long enough, and no matter when our life ends, we will age. We will all strive. We all will be strong. And at times we will be tested where we are weak. The measure of how far we go is not defined by the money or our status, but by how we treat other people in the season. Kindness is strength. Compassion is power. Tolerance is maturity. The grace you extend to others today may be the grace you require tomorrow. I say this to you personally. I am talking to you. If you go through life, or you go far enough through life, you love deeper, you listen longer, you lead with empathy, you own your own story, and you own and honor the journey of others. I just want to thank all my beautiful co-hosts for showing up today. Naheem, Brian, the voice of our show today, Dr. Stan, Stephanie Blue, Larnez, Patrice, and PJ. I want to thank all of you for continuously to volunteer your time, your heart, your soul, and your wisdom to this show. Without you all, this would not be a show. And I want to thank everyone that follows, subscribes, and helps us grow in this show. And maybe one day we'll find a sponsor or a brand that would like to attach themselves that will be connected to real content and not just through likes and views and viral and whatever. We may go viral one day. We may say something stupid or on here like give peace a chance or whatever, stop killing our children. But anyway, if you like what you've heard today, go to RMK Productions and Network and subscribe, follow, comment, do whatever you want to do. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, email us at info@rmkproductions.org. We meet every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we start on time. So we log on 15 minutes earlier. The link to the show is in the body of the description of the show on YouTube. And I just want to thank you. My grandfather always said, when you get to a place in life where you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And when that's said, we say what?
Fade to black.
But make sure
You come back.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Until next week.
Welcome Motivation Sunday with Kevin and friends.